Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist of Medfields.
And an especially warm welcome to all those who are visiting. We hope you will stay for social hour downstairs following the service. And of course, welcome to all streaming in from home.
This meeting house where we gather was built in 1789. However, this is the third meeting house of this congregation, which was first gathered in 1651, settling here on this land that was and is still now the homeland of the Nipmuc Nation, who inhabited this area for thousands of years.
While we realize we cannot undo the harm that has already been caused to the Nipmuc Nation, we strive to prevent further harm and to find ways to support our Indigenous neighbors, as our faith calls us to do. In your order of service, you will find a link to our website for ways we can all help.
Holding all of this in our hearts, we welcome you to this place. Here we search for truth and understanding. Here we celebrate life and we contemplate its mysteries. Here we share healing and wholeness. So wherever you are, wherever you're from, whatever you believe, whomever you love, we welcome you to this congregation. We gather together in community to open our being, to open ourselves to a reality that is greater than each of us individually. Let us find together in our time inspiration and renewal. Let us touch the holy in one another and be touched by the graciousness of life. Let us find a calm that will carry us through all the days ahead. And let us begin with the intention to become the peace we wish to see in the world. Come, let us worship together.
This morning's chalice lighting reading is entitled "The End is the Beginning" by Katie Savani Gelfand. We call forth the life of our faith by igniting our chalice. This spark of new beginnings invites us into a sacred space to reflect where we have been and where we are going. Even knowing that this particular flame will intentionally end with our ritual extinguishing, we fear not its end. For we know with brave hearts that from every ending of our lives, we are sent forth to make a new beginning.
Please rise in body or in spirit for the reading of our congregational covenants. You'll find that on the last page of your order of service. And this morning we'll be reading lines 1, 2, and 6. Love is the foundation and spirit of our congregation, and we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity. As people of goodwill, we covenant with one another to share our joys and sorrows and care for one another in a connected and nurturing congregation. Please remain standing for our opening hymn. Just as long as I have breath, it's number 6 in your gray hymnal. Seated. All right, well, now I'd invite forward David Russell to lead us in a moment for all ages.
I'm actually Kate Chavara in David Russell costume. So you want to come forward, young people? Let's all sit up here, please. Tape for you. Okay, so turn around and take a look at what I have here. Yes. Shall we call it a strip of paper? Okay. All right, so one end here and one end there, right? And how many sides? Well, not edges. I mean like this and this. Yeah, 2 sides. Okay, so we're going to do something really cool. And if you already know what we're going to do, please don't say anything, okay? After we're done, you can say that you knew it all along. So I figured you might know it. All right. So we're going to make the ends disappear, and we're going to make one side disappear. So I'm going to give each of you a strip of paper. Okay. So now, take your strip of paper and twist it once, and then bring the ends together. Keep that twist. And then the real Kate Chavara and the real Sarah Zaccoli will help you tape these together, or they'll give you a piece of tape. You want to tape the ends together. So, some of you may know already that you have just made one side of this disappear. But let's prove it, okay? So take a pen and pencil. Here, you have a pen already? Yep, go ahead. Okay. So now you've got your, you know what? I didn't put my take my okay. All right. All right, so we're going to prove that we made one side disappear. So what you want to do is take your pen or pencil and hold your strip of paper like that on the hard surface. Okay? It doesn't matter. And put the pen on it, or pencil, Now don't move the pen or pencil, move the piece of paper. So you're drawing a line down the middle of the strip of paper. So it should start to look like this. All right? And then just keep going and see what happens. What's the surprise? There's no more end, right? There's only one side, so you could just keep going the whole time. You could keep going how long without ever meeting the end of the line? Forever, right? Okay, now hold your strip of paper up like this. See if you can get it to look like this. All right? John, I think you said it. What does that symbolize? Okay, right. So this, right? Does everybody know? Or can you look if this is infinity? Right. Goes on forever, never ends, right? If I turn it like this, does it remind you of something else? An 8? A peanut? What about if I put some sand up here?
An hourglass.
An hourglass.
The time is never ending.
Okay, well, so the sand runs down here, right? What is the hourglass used for?
Tracking timing.
Tracking time, telling time, right? And what happens, what does it mean when all the sand is down here?
It's the
It's
end.
the end. Okay, so this means never ending, and this means there's an end, right? Time runs out. Okay, so what do you think it means? And I don't know the answer. But that means forever, and this means there's an end. That's it. All right. Have fun.
Let's sing the children out as they head to religious exploration. Quiet our minds now as we enter into this time of prayer and meditation. O Spirit of life, Spirit of love, help us to hold the essentials before us as guides and blessings, as we let go of what does not serve the flourishing of beloved community. Today and in all the days ahead, help us to ground ourselves in what is true and what is life-giving. In the embrace of the love that is larger than any of us, we hold all those in need of healing in body or in spirit. We give our thanks for this earth, which never abandons us, returning with new life again and again. Give our attention and thanks and celebration while the joys of our life that call us to make more joyful lives for others. And we lift up those places of injustice and brokenness in our worlds. We ask with humility for the continued courage, creativity, and compassion to create a world where all people have access to the gifts of life and the gifts of this beautiful planet. Let us now enter into a time of silent meditation. Amen. Now I'd invite forward Ann Cunningham to share with us the morning's reading.
Good morning. Goodbyes Are Hard by Lauren Robbins. Goodbyes are hard, so hard in fact that many of us skip that step within our relationships. Whether saying goodbye is see you later or goodbye is a final step in creating closure in a relationship, we often deny ourselves the opportunity to practice this important human interaction. For many people, goodbyes are uncomfortable. They provide the opportunity to both experience and express the value that the relationship or person has had in our life. This vulnerability, displaying the difficulty we may experience separating from one another, is a common challenge in a world where many are told to stay strong, avoiding the chances that you might cry, express another emotion, or be perceived as overly sensitive. That's all bogus. The human condition about experiencing emotions and connecting with others through relationships. Saying goodbye is a cathartic exercise in interpersonal connection and validating the impact people and experiences have on our lives. It's important to honor the footprint others leave on our heart. It's equally important to recognize that not all relationships are meant to be lifelong. Many are time-limited. They are established relationships no longer serves its previous function. It's okay to let relationships ebb and flow and let some float away. That doesn't mean they didn't matter. We're continuously evolving. Accordingly, our needs change, and so do the relationships that fulfill those needs. So practice saying goodbye. Do what feels right to express the value of that their relationship, their support, and their camaraderie has had. Allow others to see the impact that their presence has had on you. And when it's time to say goodbye, whether just for now or forever, know that in saying goodbye, you're not devaluing the time spent with the other person, but saying, you matter, and you've been a part of my story. Goodbyes may be hard, but that doesn't mean we should pretend they don't exist. Emotional discomfort often equals emotional growth, something we all need to continually pursue for joy and life satisfaction.
Thank you, Ann. Well, it's a time of change around here at First Parish. It's a time of change for this congregation as you search for a new minister. You know, all of this may bring up some feelings within you, but however you're feeling right now, please know that the pastoral care team and I are here to help you process any of this. You know, sometime when I was just starting out in the ministry, someone pointed out to me that all ministry is interim ministry. You know, whether it's for a year or 2 or 10 or 30, we serve our congregations knowing that we prepare the way for whatever comes next. You know, just as every member here of this congregation participates in sustaining and developing the congregation, always with one eye to future generations, who we hope will call this their spiritual home long after we're gone. You know, we ministers like to imagine ourselves as a kind of Moses figure sometimes, leading the people through the wilderness to the promised land, Moses himself, as the story goes, doesn't get to enter the promised land. His time comes to an end, and it's actually Aaron who takes the people to the final step into the promised land. But obviously, I'm no Moses, and your next minister isn't Aaron, and there is no promised land. There's just the continual change of time. There are in that process, however, different levels of change. Change is sometimes like that caterpillar becoming a bigger and better caterpillar, or like the butterfly becoming a better butterfly. And sometimes it's radically transformational, like the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. Sometimes it's like going from first grade to second grade to third grade, building on what you are and what you know, and you grow from there, branching out in some new ways from that same basic trunk. Sometimes, though, it's not incremental building, but it's a tearing down. Not building on what you know, but unlearning the knowledge and habits that served you well in their time, but will now need to be unlearned. Not a new branching out, but making yourself into a whole new tree. I would say that this congregation is nicely on a path of building on what you are and what you know how to do, and getting better and better at that. The butterfly is more and more finding its wings, flying higher and more confidently. There are times when more radical change is needed. So what I'd like to talk about this morning is what that looks like. Not because you need it, but just to help you to be ready to bravely face transformation when the need might arise. The congregation as a whole aside, some of you individually might be finding yourselves at a place in life where your heart is telling you that a transformation is called for. So I'd like to speak to that. This type of deeper transformational work can be really hard. Some people will make external changes to avoid any real transformation. Someone might, for example, walk out of a relationship because their partner didn't measure up to the model. They might then go looking for someone else who at first appears to fit the model, but then that same cycle repeats itself. The partners might change, but there's been no real internal change. No transition into a new way of being in the world. As William Bridges writes, people who try to deal only with externals are people who walk out of relationships, they leave jobs, they move across the country, but who don't end up significantly different from what and who they were before. They storm out of a job, saying those rotten, no good bosses, rather than discover what it is inside of themselves that keeps finding such bosses to work for. They end another relationship rather than let go of the behaviors, the attitudes, the assumptions, and images of self or of others that keep making relationships turn out this way. Sometimes we change as a strategy to avoid changing. That is, we make external changes so we don't have to internally change. It's like we have this inner concept of the cast of characters we want to play the supporting roles in our lives. We need a supporting cast that includes the flawless parent, the noble leader, the perfect spouse, the trustworthy friend, and on and on. We keep looking for actors to play their parts, regularly switching our cast members, but never realizing that the script in our head is only in our head. That script needs rewriting, or better, we need to let go of the idea that we can script our lives. I'm not the playwright of the drama of life, or even the drama of my life, and you are not the playwright of yours either. You and I are all improv actors. You know, each of us is just one member of a troupe of others coming and going on the stage. You don't even make it up as you go along, not you individually. The whole troupe collectively makes it up as we go along together. You get to speak lines and be heard and taken into account, and others speak and you take them into account. But if you're following a script in your head, then you'll get out of sync with the troupe. You can leave them and join another troupe, and if you're still looking to play out your script, that cycle just repeats itself. No changes are happening, but you're not being changed. You're making surface changes, but not doing the real growth of transformation. This morning I'm drawing here on a book called Transitions by William Bridges. He says you can change partners, change cities, change jobs, change churches, but if you're using the same strategies to pursue the same purposes, you haven't made a transition. A transition means that new purposes have emerged for you, and new purposes entail new strategies. You know, one of the most important differences between being a change and a transition is that changes are driven to reach a goal, but transitions start with letting go of what no longer fits or is adequate to the life stage that you are in. Transition begins with an ending. And there's some time in between of being neutral, what's called the neutral zone, and only then becomes a new beginning. First, let's start with the ending. As Bridges writes, the ending requires 5 disses: disengagement, dismantling, disidentification, disenchantment, and disorientation. I'll present them in that order, but they could be done in any order. First is disengagement. We need to disengage from the life that we have had, from the person we have been. In traditional societies, a young initiate is removed from the family, taken into the forest or the desert. Bridges writes, divorces, deaths, job changes, moves, illnesses, and many lesser events disengage us from the context in which we have known ourselves. As long as the system is working, it is very difficult for a member of it to imagine an alternative way of life, an alternative identity. But with disengagement, a process of change begins, clarified, channeled, and supported. That change can lead toward a development and renewal. Then there's dismantling. The old habits and behaviors and practices that made you feel like yourself have to be dismantled, taken apart a piece at a time. Ritual periods can help, he writes. For 3 days, you keep a vigil over the lost one. On the 30th night after the death, you have a ceremony. You wear only black for a prescribed period, and you hold a remembrance ceremony on the anniversary of the death. And as you do these things, you slowly dismantle or unpack your relationship or identity that you've lost. The third is disidentification, and breaking your old connections to the world and taking apart the internal structures required by those connections. You also lose your old ways of defining yourself. You know, maybe there's the loss of role that prescribed your behavior and made you readily identifiable. One way or another, most people in transition have the experience of no longer being quite sure who they are. That's disidentification. The old identity stands in the way of transition and of transformation and self-renewal. But losing an identity is uncomfortable, which leads us to disenchantment. This is the discovery that in some sense, one's world is indeed no longer real. You know, recall, for instance, the disenchantments of childhood, that there's no Santa Claus, that parents sometimes lie or aren't afraid, and make stupid mistakes, that best friends let you down. The lifetime contains a long chain of disenchantments, many small and a few large, lovers who prove unfaithful, leaders who are corrupt, idols who turn out to be pretty dull, organizations that betray your trust. And worst of all, there are times when you turned out to be what you said and even believed that you were not. Sometimes a significant transition begins with disenchantment, the letting go of what used to seem true. And finally, there's disorientation. The reality that is left behind was one in which we knew which way was up and which way was down, which way was forward and which way was back. It orients us. But in a transition, the old sense of life as going somewhere breaks down, and we feel like shipwrecked sailors on some existential shore. Disorientation is meaningful, but it's not fun. Things that used to be important don't seem to matter much now. We often feel stuck, dead, lost in some great dark non-world. And after some form of disengagement, dismantling, disidentification, disenchantment, and disorientation, comes the time in the neutral zone. You're not the new you yet, but you're not the old you anymore. You need some time to just be. The new self emerges when it's ready. You can't force it because you don't yet know what it needs to be. We need to get away for a time, not really to think, at least not in any way that produces definite results. Instead, we walk the beaches or the back streets. We sit in the park. We gaze at the clouds. Only with time alone in this apparently aimless neutral zone can the inner business of self-transformation begin. Remember that the process of transformation is essentially a death and rebirth process, rather than one of mechanical modification. The process of transformation and reintegration is the source of renewal, and it's going to take a while. It might take a year, but we need our neutral zone just the way that an apple tree needs the cold of winter. The way out of the neutral zone is to plunge all the way into it. The way out is in. Except that you need this time in neutral. Find regular times and places to be alone. Begin a journal of your neutral zone experiences. Take this pause in the action of your life and reflect on what you really, really want. And as the old purposes and meanings fall away, what really do you want? Only after some time you will begin again. The neutral zone could be described as a goo phase. The caterpillar goes into its cocoon and doesn't simply begin sprouting butterfly wings. It dissolves into goo. The goo you would find if you open a cocoon halfway through its period. And out of that goo, a butterfly begins to take form. But friends, you can't skip the goo. No need to rush. In fact, there's a need not to rush. For if we're in transition and not merely change, it's important that we take our time. We need to let the goo do what it needs to do. Then when we are truly ready, we peel away the layers of chrysalis, fan our wings to let them dry, and then, and only then, is the butterfly ready to fly. So may it be. Amen. invite forward Mary Corthell to introduce the morning's offering.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I was sitting here thinking about offering, like what does it mean? And to me, it means the tending of what we truly cherish and what sustains us and what gives us the time and the space to reflect on what's truly meaningful. And the shimmering reverence of belonging, which is something that I was raised to understand as really being a place, whether it's in ourselves or in our community, that truly gives us the breath and the time and the space to be with each other. This is the time in our service where financially we offer to the church an offering of financial support. This week we're sharing it with Luce, which is a Massachusetts immigrant justice network that's doing amazing work for people who don't get to experience the shimmering reverence of belonging and are needing their support to deal with the current environment we're in. So whatever you can give, we will gratefully receive.
Please rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn, Spirit of Life. It's number 123 in your gray hymnal. Friends, as we prepare to leave this sacred space, may you leave this time together changed. May the promises you've made to yourself about who you want to be feel closer to the reality of who you are right now. May you share that feeling of transformation wherever you go. May it spread into every word, deed, thought, and interaction until we are all changed, transformed, and transforming together into our better selves. Go in peace. extinguish our chalice, but may its light and warmth stay with us until we meet again. Here ends our worship. Let our service begin.